Welcome to the Geo Owl podcast.
The new era of intelligence.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first episode of the Geo Owl podcast, where we host engaged conversations designed to advance the effectiveness of intelligence operations through technology, innovation, and application. We are coming to you from Signal Fire Studios in Wilmington, North Carolina. And hosting the episode with me as the facilitator is Nick Smith. Nick, welcome to Signal Fire Studios, man.
Matt, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah.
It's great to be down here. This building's awesome, and you guys got something really cool here, so appreciate you having me and the Geo Owl podcast here in the new studio.
Heck
here
yeah.
in downtown Wilmington.
Now, I know most people aren't going to be seeing the aesthetics of what's going on in this building, but our new studio is in what's called the Cargo District, but we occupy a nice little quaint corner in an old industrial warehouse, and it's an exciting place to be, and we got good air conditioning considering how hot and sticky it is outside. Nick, so you're here in our studio. We're starting a conversation just about all aspects of your business and the expertise, the values, and the services that it brings to industry. I'm just curious. I want to get to know first who you are, what your personal journey has possibly looked like, and then we can kind of start diving into what Geo Owl is today. So if you don't mind, share with us where are you originally from, kind of your upbringing, your raising, and just kind of start the narrative from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think like a lot of people that joined the military around the same time I did, I was living in Florida, and I witnessed September 11th, and I just remember thinking immediately after September 11th that, we had to do something that, how we responded to that event, I knew was, even as a, 18, 19-year-old kid, I kind of knew that was an important event. And then here we are 20 years later, look at what's entailed since then.
So are you you grew up in Florida?
Yeah, I grew up in Florida. I was born in Michigan. My family's from Michigan. But they moved down to Florida to be in the warm weather. My mom works at the Veterans Administration, still works there. She's been working there for...
What does she do?
She is a dietitian at the Veterans
I didn't
Hospital.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
It is a thing. It turns out that veterans need to eat. And then my dad retired as a teacher. So I grew up there near the beach. So sort of like here in Wilmington, North Carolina, right near the coast. And
that's on the Gulf side, right?
Yeah, it's on the Gulf side, specifically west of Tampa. So if you look at where Tampa's at, we're right on the coast there.
Isn't west of Tampa the Gulf, or no?
Yeah, so Pinellas County, which is west of Hillsborough County, it's a little peninsula that sticks out, and that's where St. Petersburg is at, and where I grew up in Seminole.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, I know right where that is, because I forgot I actually have a close friend that lives in Seminole, and that's actually a really cool area. Like,
yeah, it's great.
I've only been to Tampa once, and you cross that long bridge to go to Seminole, and
the Howard Franklin. Yeah,
that's what the name of the bridge is.
It's the Howard Franklin Bridge. Yes, it's one of the largest land bridges in the country.
How long is it?
I don't know. I don't know exactly. I just know that people always say it's the longest land bridge. I've always known it as the thing that feeds traffic into Almerton and causes a lifetime of traffic and congestion.
Yeah, I can only imagine. 7 Mile Bridge in the Keys. That's got to be longer, right?
That's probably longer. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That one's probably much longer than Howard Franklin.
All right, so you grew up in the Tampa area. Mom retired, or still with the VA. Your dad was a teacher. Are you an only child?
No, I have 2 brothers. I'm the middle child. My older brother Nathan still lives in Largo, Florida, which is kind of in the same area, and he's a successful entrepreneur. Runs multiple businesses, doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And then my little brother lives in the St. Pete area, and he he does a lot of manufacturing and things like that.
Okay.
So,
And you're the only veteran.
I'm the only veteran. Yes.
Neither of your parents were served?
Well, I'm the only veteran of the children. My dad did serve on the Air Force, the Air National Guard, in his youth.
Right.
So I'm not the only veteran in the family, but
So you grew up in beautiful coastal Gulf Coast, Florida. Had you graduated high school when 9/11 happened?
yeah. So I graduated high school, and I think like a lot of people that age, right, 18 years old, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I just went to community college. And I remember sitting in community college, and I looked around like, man, these are a lot of the same people I was just in high school with. And
Right.
Anyways.
What year did you graduate, by the way?
2001.
God, you're
Yeah, 2001.
dating me. So tell me this. Do you remember your class song?
No.
Like, did you have one?
No, I don't remember that. No.
So I graduated in 98, and my class song was Green Day's Time of Your Life.
Yeah, you're old. Yeah.
Thank you. I am.
By at least 3. That's actually the year my older brother graduated, so there you go.
Oh, you're in good company. He's a good man.
Yeah, he's a great man. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so you're at community college. By the way, your transition from high school and immediately following seems very similar to mine. So I have an appreciation for kind of how you're describing what your life was like then.
Well, I mean, when I talk to other veterans, I mean, it's a very similar story. I mean, for people my age, the impact of that day was massive in terms of what it meant to serve in the military, and so many people I've talked to over the years, very similar story to mine, and I think that's a good thing, and that not the only one, right? We're not alone in this, and the veteran community is pretty strong, especially here in Wilmington.
Right.
So it's always good to have that kind of same lineage.
So I'm just curious, where were you exactly on 9/11?
I was at school at the St. Pete Community College, in the main library, and I remember seeing it on TV and just going, "What is this? I don't even." It was very confusing. I was like, I don't understand what's happening. And then I went home. I was still staying at my parents' house. And I remember just watching in the living room going, this is crazy. I've never seen anything like this, So it was definitely something that impacted my decision to join the military.
So 9/11 happens. It has obviously a profound impact on you, as it did for everybody in their own way. At what point did those observations, those experiences dictate your next step, your next move? Like, was it immediate? Was it something that weighed on you for a day, a couple of weeks? Like, what did that process look like when it pushed you over the edge to pull the trigger and make a decision?
Yeah, so I had thought about joining the military already at that point. Like I said, I was in community college looking around. I was like, I kind of just did this in high school. So I was already thinking about it. I was already talking with recruiters. But once that happened, that was it. I was like, there's something here that needs to that needs to be done. There's work to do here. So that really solidified my vision and direction for what I wanted to do in terms of military service.
Did you have any idea what specifically you wanted to do in the military, or what branch you wanted to go into?
So I scored high enough on the ASVAB to select an intelligence
You don't say.
career, which was very fortunate because my dumb 18-year-old brain was thinking, I want to go carry guns and shoot people. But I think, my smarter brain somewhere along the decision-making tree said, you know what, you should probably pick something that might have more applicability after you get out of service. So I picked, which was then 96 Delta. It's now called a 35 Golf, a geospatial intelligence analyst. And the way it was explained to me at the time was, you look at satellites. And I was like, well, okay, that sounds great. Let's do that. And then when I was selecting the MOS, they said, do you want to jump out of airplanes? I'm like, yes.
Duh. What do you think airplanes are made for?
Why even bother asking? I mean, just put it down. I want that.
Right.
So I was fortunate enough to be an Airborne 96 Delta, which is a satellite imagery analyst / geospatial intelligence analyst.
Now, you and I have talked about this before, and it was very, I guess, humbling for me because you just were indicating you had this like internal voice that was like, but maybe I should do something that could be more fruitful in the long run. I didn't have that Jiminy Cricket sitting on my shoulder.
Yeah.
I was just that idiot that was like, no, give me a gun and let me go do, when you're 18, it's just like, it's so nostalgic and just nothing is better than being a ground pounder. And then you get there and you're like, oh, wow, this is so It's humbling to hear people like you that had the wherewithal to make a decision that was, I don't know, more impactful strategically. All right. So they offer you, so you score high enough on the ASVAB to be a geospatial intelligence analyst. They offer you Airborne. So what did that process look like? When did you enter the Army?
Yeah. So there was a few months there when I went through the, like a pre-enlistment period where they teach you preliminary military skills like marching and whatnot. So I participated in that program. And then, I think it's called the Delayed Entry Program at the time. That's what it was called.
Yeah, DEP, right?
Yeah. So I did that, and then in February, I got shipped off to basic training.
And where was that?
In Fort Jackson, otherwise known amongst the Army as Relaxin' Jackson.
Where is that?
It's in South Carolina near Columbia.
So what was the weather like when you were there? Was it hot and muggy?
Well, I was there in the winter, so it was cold.
I would prefer that over like.
I'll take the cold any day.
Yeah. Okay.
Especially when you're outside most of the time. You can always put more stuff on, but when it's hot and you're marching outside with all that equipment on, no, thank you.
Yeah. All right. So Fort Jackson, Relaxin' Jackson. Mm-hmm. Is it considered like a more cush environment for basic training, or?
Yeah, that's what everybody says that they go to the other basic training locations, right? Or if you're in the Marine Corps or whatever.
You got your Hollywood Marines, that go to MCRD San Diego, which
it's always harder elsewhere. Wherever you're at, it's always harder at the other place, right? It's just like, it's the same thing that goes into, thinking that the generation behind us is always weaker, right? It's like, they're weak over there in Jackson. It's the same philosophy. There's no difference,
Right.
Was it difficult? I don't know. For me, it wasn't a difficult thing to go through, but a lot of people had struggled with it and dropped out, as it happened in basic training. But
so and give me the time frame. So you're there in winter time. Is this like December
2002, around January, February?
Okay, so you're still fired. You are still jacked up, like ready to kick somebody's ass because our nation.
Yeah, I was ready to get to work.
Right,
ready to get to work.
I really would have, I don't want to say wished, but having motivation like that in basic, I went to boot camp in beginning of 2000, and I literally thought we were never going to see combat in my entire career.
Right.
And, I had my struggles, but it was primarily just because I was immature and I was kind of lazy. But joining the military after contemporaneous to 9/11, I feel like that would have been just like this boost, this shot in the arm that just put fire in your rear and made you want to, send.
Well, there's at least a mission, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Not that that's a good thing given all that's occurred, but there's at least a mission. So all right. So you go through basic training. You go through your schooling. What did your schooling entail for your specific MOS? So about 6 months of intelligence training. All sorts of various aspects to the job, and understanding how to read imagery, how to understand the various components of providing intelligence, reporting, things like that. A lot of time spent on learning how to identify Russian vehicles, which is, other than the United States, Russia has the most military equipment in the world. So identifying Russian equipment is very important. So
like the BMPs and the
BMPs, the T-62,
T-70s
yeah,
or 62s, right?
Yeah, you got to know all that stuff. You got to know what they look like. You got to know what the.
What about aircraft? Or is this primarily terrestrial vehicles or?
Yeah. So, but also aircraft too. So tactical, what we call TAC ID. You learn all that stuff. I don't remember any of it, so it must not have been that important. And the equipment changes so often that probably wouldn't be relevant today. But
and I can only imagine when you're going through your MOS school, like they were probably like outdated, and they were probably trying to really figure out, dude, we need to like revolutionize, because 9/11 revolutionized warfare for the West.
So they were but when I started training, they were just shifting away from hard copy intelligence, like working on light tables, right? Looking at photographs on light tables, to analyzing imagery on a computer screen. So it was kind of...
So that was when they were in the process of like transitioning?
Well, kind of after, yeah, it's during that transition. It's not like, probably at the tail end of when they started to transition more towards computer-based analysis.
Right.
So before that, it was all working on light tables and
overhead projectors, transparencies.
Yeah, I mean, you know how the military does it. There's whatever's cheap, right? Whatever's cheap, that's what they would use. So it was an interesting time. Looking back, it was interesting, like to go through at that period.
So so as an analyst, your MOS didn't entail like operating aerial vehicles or satellites or anything. No. And I mean, because I know nothing. Most people know nothing about that job.
So as a analyst, you're providing intelligence analysis, right? So for us, it was analyzing tactical and strategic aerial imagery and making sense of it, telling people what's down there, what type of equipment is down there, what's happening, where are the checkpoints at, where do we need to set up tactically.
So I mean, you take what's to a layman like an ambiguous image, and you digest it and you translate that information to something that's extremely tangible. And hey, see all that stuff? Yeah, those are. I mean, you're breaking it down and simplifying it so commanders in the operational theater can make efficient and effective decisions.
Right, and even back then, color imagery wasn't as proliferant. So
it's unbelievable.
It was a lot of black and white, which actually gets you better, in some instances, better resolution. So it actually does take a trained eye to say what's down there and to explain that. And of course, there's different types of imagery. You have electro-optical sensors, which is what you would traditionally think of black and white, color, but they also have black and white imagery. Infrared, which is heat signatures, right? Differentiating the signatures of different components of what you're looking at. Hyperspectral, multispectral, all sorts of different types of imagery. You have to make sense of that. You have to recommend what the best sensor is to use so that you can get to the right decision ultimately.
Oh man, you get me all fired up because I was a hardcore.
I hope so.
In a good way. I was a hardcore Tom Clancy. Like I read Tom Clancy novels like it was going out of style, and I remember specifically watching the movie Patriot Games. Yeah, and they were.
Was that Ben Affleck?
No.
No.
Right. Ben Affleck came way. No, this is Harrison Ford.
Oh, Harrison Ford.
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
Right. You get a pass.
Yeah, this is way in the back. But no, I remember at one scene they were like in Langley and they're sitting there analyzing some satellite imagery, and one of the big things they identified was that there was a female in this potential terrorist training camp, and that ended up being the that was what they needed to know. These are the bad guys we're looking for. And I remember even back then I was just like, dude, that's freaking cool. And that was like what, the early mid 90s.
Yeah. So that character is an imagery analyst. That was his job.
Yeah, I remember he was an intelligence analyst.
Well, specifically imagery, if I want to.
Or imagery.
Throw that
you would.
I forget his name. What's the main character's name? Whatever, it doesn't matter.
Jack Ryan.
Yeah. So he's an imagery analyst, and he gets obviously put into.
And he was a former intelligence officer in the Marine Corps.
Right.
At least that was the story.
Gets put into all these crazy scenarios. It's nothing like that, but it's fun to
Very cool.
fun to
So,
read.
all right. So you get out. So what's it called when you finish your MOS? In the Marine Corps, we call it getting out to the fleet. What's it called in the Army? Like you get to post
Well, after that, I went to Airborne school, and then I went.
Did you do that in Benning, Fort Benning?
Yeah, Fort Benning, Georgia, and outran a bunch of Marines there.
We can get fat and nasty. It can happen.
But in any event, then I went to my unit in Fort Bragg. So I don't know what we called in the Army. We're just getting to your unit. I don't know.
Yeah, checking into your
PCSing,
unit.
Yeah.
Okay, so and then briefly just walk us through what your military career looked like as far as deployments, maybe any significant events that really stood out as a pivotal moment in your life. I feel like everybody who has served has one of those somewhere. But what did your active years of service look like?
Yeah, so I get to my unit after all this training, right after a year of being in training, and I'm ready to go. I'm high speed. My unit is deploying to Kuwait, right? This is during the entry into the Iraq War. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. Let's go. And they're like, well, you don't have your security clearance yet. You got to wait on your security clearance, which sometimes takes a while. So I actually ended up doing gate guard at Fort Bragg while my unit's in Kuwait deployed, doing the work that I had just trained to do. And I'm there at Fort Bragg guarding the gate, checking IDs and doing vehicle
gnarly.
inspections. So that was pretty awful. But aside from that, the rest of it was fine. My unit came back, and then not too long later, we deployed to Iraq, and that was obviously in terms of my active duty career, that was the most interesting thing that I did, I guess you could say. So
where were you? So when were you in Iraq?
2004, 2005, basically.
And whereabouts were you in Iraq?
Baghdad, Camp Victory, primarily.
That's not the green zone, correct? Or is it
inside?
It is in the green zone. I was there for the invasion, and that was it. So I was at FOB zone, so I'm like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah. I don't know.
We had our MREs and bullets. That's all we had.
Yeah, we had computers.
Right.
We're nerds. But we actually got to work out of the Al Faw Palace in Baghdad. So
really?
It was pretty neat. So we worked out of one of Saddam's palaces. He was actually being held captive on the base while we were there.
Did you ever see him?
No, I never saw him. No.
Been a whole lot cool if you did.
I know. Well, I'll get over it somehow.
So what did your day-to-day routine look like when you were deployed as an imagery analyst? What did that look like?
I wish I could make it sound really glamorous and stuff, but what it consisted of a lot was receiving requests for information from different components. And so we'd get a request like, hey, we have a cell phone registered in this area. What do you see down there? So for us, we're like scrambling, looking at satellite imagery, trying to look at this 4-mile radius ellipse tell people what's down there. So we did. So we did a lot of requests for information. So those are very on a case-by-case basis of what you're providing.
How old was this imagery that you're looking at, typically?
It was the same day or the day before,
okay.
So you pull down the most recent imagery.
And who, obviously, from a high unclassified perspective, who is actually operating these satellites? Is it the DoD? Is it like NSA? I don't know.
Well, the National Reconnaissance Office is responsible for national reconnaissance. Today, there's probably even a broader mix of who operates the satellites with all the stuff happening in space right now. But back then, the NRO was basically the go-to.
I've never even heard of that.
The National Reconnaissance Office. Well,
I should know that. I was a reconnaissance marine, but I don't know.
Well, it's quite a different type of reconnaissance.
Right.
But yeah, so they're responsible, and then we would put in collection taskings through NRO to collect imagery. Basically, everyone's vying for time on a vehicle, the satellite moving through space, and everyone's trying to get access to the camera, the high-powered camera on that, and we would have to put in our requests to
be provided
so that we could look at the imagery and tell people what's down there.
What do they do? They like set up a Dropbox and like email you a link saying
Just like that. Well, back in 2000,
4 or 5,
2005, there wasn't really Dropbox either. So, much slower processes for that.
Yeah.
But I mean, things were slow back then. I mean, slow, super slow. You'd wait all day to get one image, and once it got in, then you're like, okay, let's get to work.
Right.
So a lot of time spent waiting on images to download, and then of course you're in Iraq, so it's not like you have crazy gigabit line there.
Fiber optic.
Right, you're using military
broadband
equipment set up by our super awesome maintainers to bring in the imagery and be sitting there all day waiting for an
Was
image
technology, was that like a constant struggle in 04 or 05?
Big time. It still is, but for different reasons.
Right.
Now it's almost like you have too much data. And it's like, oh, okay, what do I do with all this now? Back then it was like you're just waiting on the one thing that you needed.
Right.
Now I have so many options. I can go in 80 different directions. How do I wrangle all this? How do I make sense of it?
I mean, when Google Earth came out, what was that, 12 plus years? I mean, when Google Earth came out, I thought it was the most mind-blowing thing. It's like, you mean that I can access, fairly poor resolution, but I can access aerial imagery of anywhere in the world. And that blew my mind. It was fascinating. And now it's everyday technology that our kids are using.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's definitely interesting. And if you ever read on the origins of Google Earth, that's pretty interesting too. It was called the Keyhole Program.
That might be a great episode.
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay, so fast forward from 04 to 05. Did you redeploy to Iraq at any point, or did you have any other deployments?
I mean, I was there for a year, and then basically I was at the end of my enlistment, and I decided to come to Wilmington, North Carolina, to go to UNCW and get a degree in psychology, which I don't use. For some reason, I thought with a security clearance and a degree in psychology, I'd be able to get any job I wanted, but that wasn't the case. So after I finished school here, which was a great time, if you're looking for a school, UNCW is a fantastic place to go to school.
I concur.
After I finished school, I went to Florida and back and worked with my brother. I talked about how he's an entrepreneur, and at the time, he had started a mixed martial arts promotion, a professional fighting.
The Art of Fighting. Right?
Yeah, it was called The Art of Fighting. That's right. One of our good family friends, Dave Yost, was a professional MMA fighter. He had pretty popular in the Tampa, St. Pete area, and so that definitely helped get it up and running. And so my brother just had this really cool idea, and he ran with it, and I helped out every way that I could. And
now you shared some of those with me that are all on YouTube. I thought it was pretty freaking awesome. And the way you described it was Art of Fighting was essentially the programming that was being played on a fight night pre-fight. So it's essentially content that they're airing leading up until
Yeah. So we would do live MMA events just like the UFC does. Throughout the state of Florida, we had a pre-fight show that would run throughout the state and sometimes nationally, depending on where it was broadcast. To hype up the event, right?
Right.
You're going to put some content out there. It's the same thing that UFC does, same thing that Showtime Boxing. They all release their 24/7s and all their programming. So we had a similar type of setup, which was really successful for the first few years there in the state of Florida. So I got a really good opportunity to learn about working with the press, working with television, working with professional athletes. It was a fantastic experience, a lot different than anything I'd ever done. So it was kind of mixed, but I definitely got that a good exposure and being able to work side by side with my brother every day, definitely have that entrepreneurial bug rub off on me. So
right. So you guys are growing momentum with Art of Fighting.
Mm-hmm.
You guys you're growing a following. You guys are having an impact and a footprint in your region. But then the housing market crashed, right?
So not quite. So the housing market had already crashed around this time. So we we were hosting events all throughout the state. I think we had 16 professional events, which is quite a lot, plus a bunch of other amateur events. And our marquee sponsor, our headline sponsor, was Full Tilt Poker. And if you remember, not too long ago, online poker was a big deal. Everyone was playing Poker Stars or Full Tilt or one of these things, and they were sponsoring our events, providing funding for the fighters, sponsoring logos in the cage, TV commercials. I mean, you name it. They're providing a lot of our sponsorship dollars to provide these events. And something happened around that time where they got busted for embezzling or something with their money.
You don't say. An online gambling company.
Well, it's crazy. Why do you need to embezzle? You're basically, it's a no-fail business.
You're killing it.
And you go ahead and mess it up. So they get in trouble. That sponsorship dries up. So the business becomes kind of hard to run at that point. And I decided that I needed to go back into military intelligence. So I joined the Army Reserves at that point and got my clearance back up and running, and then I took a job up north in Washington, D.C.
Okay. Was it at that time that you started working with BAE or BAE Systems?
Yeah.
BAE?
Yeah, BAE Systems. They're a defense contractor, one of the biggest defense contractors.
And your role with them was Imagery Analyst or Intelligence?
Yeah, so I was same thing, sort of geospatial intelligence analyst. I worked on one of their large intelligence contracts as an analyst, and then eventually worked my way up to be like a manager. So I worked on there for about 3.5 years, and but I always had that entrepreneurial bug. So it was only a matter of time before I was going to go start my own company. But worked on some really cool intelligence programs. Experienced with a lot of different intelligence agencies that are provided some good opportunities for me to learn the intelligence community side of the house versus just the military side of the house. So it was great exposure for me at that age.
So, and then what was the transition from working, for a defense contractor to establishing your own business? At what point did that entrepreneurial itch take effect and really drive you forward?
Yeah, it was about the end of 2012. I had several run-ins with some of my managers that I had disagreements with. I was working shift work, so on top of all of the managerial tasks and stuff like that, and working as a intelligence professional, sometimes the management from the company, they would ask me to come into their office or do things. Like after working night shift, I'm like, this is crazy. Like, what are you doing? Like this is, you can't keep this up.
I need to go to sleep.
Yeah. So I thought there was a disconnect there between, the way that they were managing the work and the way that I felt about the people doing the work. We had such a great crew of people that really cared about what they were doing, and they're working on a very highly valued program that's highly touted and was very important to the U.S. government. And then, so that's one side of the fence. And then I would go into the corporate office, and they'd be like, "Oh, it doesn't matter who's in the seat." I specifically remember a manager from the company telling me it didn't matter who was in the seat. And I was like, "Are you crazy? These are intelligence professionals. It matters heavily who's in the seat. This is the difference between a good outcome and a bad outcome." I mean, sometimes people's lives are on the line, depending on what we're working on.
Now, were a lot of the team members, at least at that organization, veterans?
Yeah, most of them are veterans. And the reason is it's the most likely way for someone to get a security clearance. So if you're working in the intelligence community, they do hire quite a few people straight out of college through internships and things like that. But in the more specific niche fields like geospatial intelligence, they typically hire military veterans that have just been doing the job like I was. So
awesome. So 2012, and at what point did Geo Owl actually At what point did
Yeah.
you say, I'm starting this company?
A lot of people ask me how I came up with the name. And I remember sitting in my basement thinking, like, I'm definitely going to do this thing. I'm definitely going to start a company. And I started looking around at the other companies that existed. And if you look in this market, in the defense industry, a lot of the companies are like ABC Technologies or GXY Solutions or TLG Systems. I mean, you see where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Everybody is 3-letter acronym: systems or technology or solutions.
Lame, boring.
Yeah. So I wanted to have something that was representative of course, what we do as geospatial intelligence professionals, but also represent a brand that you can market and promote and that people remember. So as someone that was recently working night shift, I know we work around the clock as intelligence professionals, and like what stays up later than an owl? Nothing, right? So owls are also wise, so that was the other thing. And so that's where I came up with the name Geo Owl. So Geo for geospatial, and then Owl for owl, for the smart,
for
wise animals.
Staying up all night long.
Yes, they know how to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop, right? So that's ultimately what you go for there.
Well, Nick, this has been an exciting conversation. We haven't even gotten a chance to like really dive into Geo Owl because we're out of time. But your personal journey was awesome. I appreciate you sharing it with everybody. Next episode, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be diving into Geo Owl, what it is, where it came from, where it's been, and where it's going. Nick, do you have any parting words for this first episode of the Geo Owl podcast?
No, not really. Happy to talk further about it, but I think like so many people in my generation, I was very fortunate to have good parents and a good family that pointed me in the right direction. And, I think anything I've accomplished has been because of that, So it's really cool to be here and talking about something so many years later that I created. So
Heck yeah. So
cool.
your parents did it right. So the weight's on your shoulders now to replicate their actions.
Crap.
All right, folks, we're out of time. We will see you next time on the Geo Owl podcast, and have a great evening.
Visit geoowl.com and learn how Geo Owl implements next-generation intelligence advancement technologies to aid the Department of Defense with precision and expertise analysis. Geo Owl.
The new era of intelligence.